The idea that if we just obey God, or trust and obey, all will be nice and easy. Life will sail along. Well, that's not right. It's not helpful. It's not biblical. We even have a song that gets it wrong, I think, in this regard. It's a good song generally. Many of you will like it. I'm sure we have sung it here before, but we've sung it with slightly different words. It's a well-loved Christian hymn, Trust and Obey. But I think it gets it wrong here when it says, not a shadow can rise, not a cloud in the skies, but his smile quickly drives it away. Not a doubt or a fear, not a sigh nor a tear can abide while we trust and obey. And I think that's really not quite right, because that's not true to our experience as Christians. It's not true to the Bible. It's not true that if we just trust and obey, all of our troubles will vanish into thin air. They don't, do they? We know that. Jacob, at least in this part, was trusting and obeying, and yet he was also experiencing these losses, these troubles, these deaths in his life. He lost a friend, Deborah, maybe a loving nanny or nursemaid. That was back in verse 8. He lost a favorite wife, Rachel. His heart was broken by that. And then his father, Isaac, at the end of the chapter. Rachel's death was probably the most painful. We read of that, don't we, from verse 16. He loved her very much. And this death came very suddenly and unexpectedly. Must have been a great shock for Jacob. Just at a time when it looked like things were working out again. Rachel, his beloved Rachel, died in childbirth. A terrible shock for him. The fact is, we never really get used to death, don't we? There's a narrative in our society that death is okay, that it's natural, that it's part of the circle of life. You've watched The Lion King, you'll have heard all about that. But however much we say that, or try to believe that, when it happens, when we lose somebody we love, every instinct in us tells us that it's not right. It's not natural. It's not the way it's meant to be. That we were created not for death, but for life. And Jacob's heart was broken, no doubt. And so he sets up a pillar, doesn't he, over her tomb, verse 20. As if to say, Rachel, I'll never forget you. You were the love of my life. I'll never forget you. These were different times, weren't they? We've said that in many ways people haven't changed, that these were real people just like us. Yet I think one way in which things were different or are different is in how close people were to death itself in those times compared to our own situation. You see, death can be kept at a distance from us today. It's kind of sanitized and often distanced from us so that sometimes we don't actually see the death taking place, even if it's someone very close to us. So for example, I didn't see my own father dying. He was in the hospital. It's likely that people will die in a hospital, isn't it? And we're not actually there to see it. But in those days, people would actually see, they'd be there because people would die at home. And so they would see people taking their last breath. I've seen that twice in a hospital, people associated with this church who have taken their last breath. And that's, I don't know if you've seen that, but that's an unearthly thing to watch that and then to see them, as it were, passing into eternity. But that would be a much more common experience then, you see, than it is for us today with our hospitals and our sort of more sanitized experience of death. You see, we normally just see the coffin, don't we? But actually to see someone dying is a whole different thing. A shocking thing, really. And I don't think people speak very much about death. It's one of the great taboo subjects, isn't it, in our culture. I was just thinking about that as we were sitting in a cafe yesterday morning, and I was thinking to myself, I doubt very much if anybody in this cafe is talking or thinking about death at the moment, except me, of course, because I was preparing this.